The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital corridor as 8-year-old Emma Wilson pressed her face against the cold window. Her small hands left foggy prints on the glass as she watched other children play in the courtyard below. For 3 months, this had been her world: the sterile white walls, the beeping machines, and the constant smell of antiseptic that made her nose wrinkle. Emma had been diagnosed with a rare form of childhood cancer that required extensive treatment at London's Great Ormond Street Hospital. Her parents, Sarah and Michael Wilson, had moved from their small town in Yorkshire to be close to their daughter during her treatment. They rented a tiny flat nearby, using all their savings to cover the expenses that insurance wouldn't handle. Sarah sat beside Emma's bed, reading from a fairy tale book with pictures of princesses and castles. Emma loved these stories, especially the ones about brave princesses who helped others. She would often ask her mother to read the same story about a princess who visited sick children and made them feel better with her kindness. "Mummy, do you think real princesses exist?" Emma asked one afternoon, her voice weak from the latest round of chemotherapy. Her once golden hair had fallen out, and she now wore a bright pink hat that her grandmother had knitted for her. Sarah's heart broke a little more each time her daughter asked such innocent questions. "I think there are people who have princess hearts," she replied gently, stroking Emma's cheek. "People who care about others and try to make the world better." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I want to have a princess heart too, even if I'm sick." Down the hall, 10-year-old James Parker was going through his own battle. He had been at the hospital for 6 months, fighting a brain tumor that had already required 2 surgeries. His parents, David and Linda Parker, took turns staying with him while the other worked to keep their family financially afloat. James was different from Emma in many ways. Where she was gentle and dreamy, he was energetic and curious, always asking doctors and nurses about their equipment and procedures. Despite his illness, he maintained an infectious laugh that could brighten even the darkest days in the children's ward. "When I get better," James often told his parents, "I want to become a doctor and help other kids like me." He kept a notebook where he wrote down medical terms he learned and drew pictures of the machines that helped him get better. The children's ward at Great Ormond Street was a world unto itself. Parents slept in uncomfortable chairs. Nurses worked long shifts with smiles on their faces, and children faced challenges that most adults couldn't imagine. Yet somehow hope persisted in the smallest gestures. A shared toy, a kind word from a stranger, or a surprise visit from therapy dogs. Emma and James had become friends during their overlapping stays. They would sit together in the playroom when they felt well enough, sharing stories and dreams about what they would do when they left the hospital. Emma would tell James about her plans to have a garden full of flowers, while James would describe the rocket ship he wanted to build. Their parents had also formed a bond, understanding each other's struggles in ways that only they could. They shared meals in the hospital cafeteria, took turns watching each other's children during medical procedures, and offered shoulders to cry on during the hardest moments. One particularly difficult day, after Emma had experienced a setback in her treatment, Sarah sat crying in the family room. The doctors had explained that they needed to try a more aggressive approach, which meant Emma would be in the hospital for several more months. Linda Parker found Sarah there and sat down beside her without saying a word. Sometimes the presence of someone who understood was worth more than any spoken comfort. "I just want her to experience something magical," Sarah whispered, "something that makes her forget about all this pain and fear. She talks about princesses and castles, and I wish I could give her even a tiny piece of that fairy tale world." Linda nodded, thinking about her own son's dreams of becoming a doctor. "James keeps talking about wanting to meet someone important who could tell him more about helping people. He's so focused on his future. But sometimes I worry he's missing out on being a child neither." Woman could have imagined that their quiet conversation in that small room would soon lead to something that would touch not just their children's lives, but the hearts of millions around the world. The hospital staff had noticed both children's positive attitudes despite their difficult circumstances. Emma's nurses often commented on her politeness and concern for other patients, while James impressed everyone with his determination to understand his treatment and help other children feel less scared. Dr. Margaret Thompson, the head of the Children's Oncology Department, had been working at Great Ormond Street for over 20 years. She had seen thousands of children come through the ward, each with their own story of courage and hope. Emma and James stood out not because their cases were more severe than others, but because of their remarkable spirit and the way they lifted up everyone around them. "These children are truly special," Dr. Thompson mentioned to her colleague during their weekly rounds. "They've turned their own struggles into strength for others." Emma spends her good days helping newer patients feel welcome, and James has become our unofficial junior educator, helping other children understand their treatments. As autumn approached, the hospital began planning their annual charity fundraiser. This event brought together supporters, medical staff, and families to raise money for new equipment and research. Dr. Thompson had an idea that she hoped might create a memorable experience. For the children who had given so much of themselves to others, she began making some very special phone calls, reaching out to contacts she had developed over years of advocating for her patients. Her goal was ambitious, but she believed that extraordinary children deserved extraordinary experiences. Meanwhile, Emma and James continued their friendship, unaware that their positive impact on everyone around them had caught the attention of people far beyond the hospital walls. Their simple acts of kindness, sharing toys, comforting frightened children, and maintaining hope in the face of uncertainty had created ripples that would soon reach places they never could have imagined. The stage was being set for something that would transform not just two children's lives, but remind an entire nation of the power of compassion and the importance of recognizing the heroes who walk among us every day. 3 weeks before Christmas, Dr. Thompson received a phone call that would change everything. Her voice trembled slightly as she hung up the phone and immediately called for a staff meeting. The news she had to share would require careful planning and absolute discretion. "I've just received confirmation," she announced to the gathered nurses and doctors. "The Prince and Princess of Wales have agreed to visit our ward next week for a private, unannounced visit. They specifically asked to meet children who have shown exceptional courage and kindness during their treatment." The room fell silent. While the hospital occasionally received visits from celebrities and dignitaries, this was different. The royal couple had requested a meaningful interaction, not just a photo opportunity. They wanted to spend real time with the children and learn about their experiences. Nurse Patricia Williams, who had been caring for Emma since her arrival, felt tears spring to her eyes. "Emma talks about princesses every single day," she whispered. "She's going to think this is a dream." Dr. Thompson nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "The visit must remain completely confidential until the day it happens. The Royal Protection Team will coordinate with our security, but the children and families cannot know in advance. We want this to be a genuine surprise." The planning began immediately. The hospital's child life specialists worked to ensure that both Emma and James would be feeling well enough to participate. Their treatment schedules were carefully adjusted, and the medical team worked extra hard to make sure both children would have their best possible day. Sarah Wilson noticed that the hospital staff seemed unusually excited about something, but she couldn't pinpoint what had changed. The nurses were smiling more, and there seemed to be more activity in the administrative offices. When she asked, they simply said there might be a special visitor coming to the children's ward. "Maybe it's someone famous," Emma said hopefully from her bed. She had been feeling stronger lately, and her latest test results showed that the treatment was working. "Do you think it could be an actress or a singer?" Michael Wilson, who had taken the day off work to be with his daughter, smiled at her enthusiasm. "Maybe it's even better than that, sweetheart." Sometimes the best surprises are the ones we never see coming. In the room next door, James was working on a get-well card for a younger boy who had just started treatment. His mother, Linda, watched as he carefully drew pictures and wrote encouraging messages in his neat handwriting. "You know what I learned today?" James said, not looking up from his artwork. "When you help someone else feel better, it makes you feel better too. It's like magic, but real magic." David Parker observed his son with pride and amazement. Despite everything James had been through, he continued to think about others first. "You're right about that, buddy. That's the best kind of magic there is." The day of the visit arrived with typical December weather, gray skies and a light drizzle that made the hospital's windows appear blurry. Emma woke up feeling surprisingly energetic. She had asked her mother to help her put on her favorite dress, a blue one with small flowers that made her feel pretty despite losing her hair. James was also having a good day. He had been practicing walking longer distances as his strength returned after his latest surgery. He wanted to show his parents and doctors that he was getting better and stronger. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Thompson appeared in the hallway with several people the families didn't recognize. Hospital security had quietly increased, but everything seemed normal to the patients and their families. "Emma, James?" Dr. Thompson called gently. "We have some very special visitors who would like to meet you both. They've heard about what wonderful patients you are and how kind you've been to other children." Emma looked at her mother with wide eyes. "Special visitors?" she whispered. Sarah shrugged, genuinely confused but excited to see her daughter so animated. James immediately perked up. "Are they doctors? Can I ask them questions about medicine?" Dr. Thompson smiled mysteriously. "Why don't you both come to the family room and find out?" The two families made their way down the hallway, Emma in a wheelchair and James walking slowly beside his parents. Other children and families in the ward watched curiously as they passed, wondering what was happening. When they reached the family room, Dr. Thompson opened the door and stepped aside. Emma gasped audibly and James's mouth fell open in complete shock. Standing in the room, dressed casually but elegantly, were Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. They turned toward the door with genuine smiles, and Catherine immediately knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Hello, Emma," Catherine said softly, her voice warm and kind. "I've heard so many wonderful things about you from Dr. Thompson and your nurses. They tell me you're very brave and that you help other children feel better when they're scared." Emma couldn't speak at first. She looked from Catherine to William, then back to her parents as if trying to confirm that this was really happening. Finally, she found her voice. "You're a real princess," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears of joy. Catherine's own eyes grew misty. "I am, and you know what I've learned? The best princesses are the ones who have kind hearts and help others, just like you do every day in this hospital." Prince William approached James, who was still standing, frozen in amazement. "James, I understand you're interested in becoming a doctor someday. That's incredible. Dr. Thompson tells me you help other children understand their treatments and make them feel less frightened." James nodded slowly, still processing the surreal moment. "I want to help people like the doctors here help me," he managed to say. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes great doctors," William replied seriously. "And great people." The parents stood in the background, watching their children experience something that transcended all the pain and fear of the previous months. Sarah was crying openly while Linda held David's hand tightly, both of them overwhelmed by the kindness being shown to their son. Catherine sat down next to Emma's wheelchair, making sure they were at the same level. "I brought you something," she said, reaching into a small bag. "But first I want you to know that the nurses told me about your princess heart. That's the most beautiful thing anyone could have." She pulled out a small wrapped package. "This belonged to me when I was about your age, and I want you to have it." Emma's hands shook slightly as she unwrapped the gift. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a heart. It was simple but elegant, clearly something Catherine had treasured. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed, looking up at Catherine with pure wonder. "The heart charm is to remind you that having a kind heart is the most important thing anyone can possess," Catherine explained, helping Emma put on the bracelet. "You already have that, so you're already a true princess." The moment was so tender, so genuine that everyone in the room felt they were witnessing something sacred. This wasn't a formal royal visit or a publicity event. This was simply two caring people reaching out to children who had touched their hearts through their stories of courage and kindness. Prince William turned his attention to James, pulling out a chair to sit at the boy's level. "I have something for you too, James, but I want to tell you a story first." James leaned forward eagerly, his parents watching in amazement as their son engaged so naturally with the future King of England. "When I was young," William began, "I had a dream of flying helicopters to help people in emergencies. I wanted to be the person who could reach people when they needed help most urgently. Do you know what I learned?" James shook his head, completely captivated. "I learned that the most important part wasn't flying the helicopter. It was caring enough to want to help in the first place. You already have that caring heart, just like Emma has her princess heart." William reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook with the Prince of Wales feathers embossed on the cover. "This is for you to write down everything you learn about helping people. Real doctors keep notes about how to care for their patients. James accepted the notebook with reverence, running his fingers over the smooth leather cover. "This is really mine?" he asked in disbelief. "It's really yours," William confirmed. "And when you become a doctor, I hope you'll remember this moment and know that someone believed in your dream from the very beginning." Catherine had been watching the exchange with Emma, who couldn't stop looking at the bracelet on her wrist. "Emma, can I ask you something?" Catherine said gently. Emma nodded eagerly. "The nurses told me that when new children arrive and they're scared, you always try to help them feel welcome. Why do you do that?" Emma thought for a moment, her young face serious. "Because when I first came here, I was really scared too. Another girl who was getting better told me that being in the hospital doesn't mean you stop being kind. She said kindness is like medicine that everyone can give." Catherine felt her throat tighten with emotion. This 8-year-old child, facing her own enormous challenges, had learned one of life's most important lessons. "That's exactly right," she said softly. "And that's why you're so special." The royal couple spent over an hour with both families, far longer than anyone had expected. They asked about the children's treatments, their hobbies, their dreams for the future. They listened to stories about good days and bad days, about small victories and ongoing challenges. William spoke with Michael and David about the financial and emotional stress of having a child in long-term care. His questions weren't just polite small talk. He genuinely wanted to understand their experiences. "The hardest part," David admitted, "isn't the medical stuff. James handles that like a champion. It's feeling helpless when your child is fighting something you can't fight for them. And feeling guilty when you have to leave them to go to work or take care of things at home," Michael added. "You want to be everywhere at once." William nodded thoughtfully. "I can't imagine how difficult that must be. But I can see how proud you should be of both your sons. They're clearly learned from your example how to face challenges with grace." Catherine was having a similar conversation with Sarah and Linda about the unique challenges mothers face in these situations. "We put so much pressure on ourselves to be strong every moment," Sarah confided. "Sometimes I go to the bathroom just to cry where Emma can't see me." "That doesn't make you weak," Catherine assured her. "That makes you human. And the strength you show Emma every day is exactly what she needs to see." As the visit continued, word had somehow spread through the hospital. Though the staff had tried to keep it quiet, other families began gathering respectfully in the hallway, hoping for just a glimpse of the royal visitors who were spending so much time with the children. Dr. Thompson approached the group carefully. "Your Royal Highnesses, I don't want to interrupt, but there are other children and families who would be honored to meet you, if you have time." Catherine and William exchanged a look. They had originally planned for a brief private visit, but seeing the hope and excitement on these children's faces made it impossible to leave quickly. "Of course," Catherine said immediately. "We'd love to meet everyone." What followed was an impromptu visit to every room in the children's ward. Emma and James, still glowing from their special time with the royal couple, proudly accompanied them as unofficial guides. "This is Tommy," Emma announced as they entered one room. "He just started his treatment last week and he's been really brave." 6-year-old Tommy looked up from his coloring book in amazement as Catherine sat down beside his bed. "Emma's been teaching me about the different machines," he said shyly. "Has she?" Catherine smiled. "Emma's very smart, and I can see you're very artistic. What are you drawing?" "A picture of my family," Tommy replied, gaining confidence. "I want to give it to them when they visit tonight." "That's beautiful," Catherine said, examining his drawing carefully. "They're going to treasure this forever." In the next room, James introduced William to Maria, a 12-year-old girl who had been at the hospital for 2 months. "Maria knows everything about the video games in the playroom," James explained. "She's been teaching me strategy." "Strategy is very important," William agreed seriously. "In flying helicopters, we call it mission planning." "What's your favorite strategy, Maria?" As they moved through the ward, each child received personal attention from both Catherine and William. They didn't just say hello and move on. They sat down, asked questions, and genuinely engaged with each young patient. 10-year-old Abdul showed William his collection of football cards, and they spent 10 minutes discussing different players and teams. Catherine helped 8-year-old Lucy braid friendship bracelets for the nurses who had been taking care of her. The parents watched in amazement as their children, who had been dealing with serious illnesses and treatments, suddenly became animated and excited. Laughter filled rooms that usually echoed with the sounds of medical equipment and worried conversations. Nurse Patricia Williams, who had been working in pediatric oncology for 15 years, found herself wiping away tears as she watched the interactions. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered to a colleague. "They're not just visiting. They're truly connecting with these children." The visit that was supposed to last 30 minutes stretched into 3 hours. Catherine and William showed no signs of fatigue or impatience, even as their security team gently reminded them of their schedule. As they prepared to leave, Emma approached Catherine one more time. "Princess Catherine," she said formally, "can I ask you something important?" Catherine knelt down once again. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it? When I get better and leave the hospital, how can I keep being kind like you taught me? How do I keep my princess heart working?" The question was so innocent and profound that Catherine had to pause before answering. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "You keep your princess heart working by remembering how it feels to be helped when you need it most," she said gently. "And then you look for ways to help others feel that same way. You never stop caring no matter where you go or what you do." Emma nodded solemnly as if receiving the most important lesson of her young life. "I promise I'll remember." James approached William with similar seriousness. "Prince William, when I become a doctor, I want to help children like you helped me today. Not just with medicine, but by caring about them as people." William placed his hand on James's shoulder. "That's exactly the kind of doctor the world needs, James. And I believe you'll be extraordinary at it." As the royal couple prepared to leave the hospital, an unexpected moment occurred that would forever change how the public viewed their visit. Dr. Thompson had arranged for a photographer to document the visit for the hospital's records, but what happened next was unplanned and completely spontaneous. Emma, still wearing her new bracelet, suddenly reached up and hugged Catherine tightly around the waist. The Princess of Wales, momentarily surprised, immediately returned the embrace with genuine warmth. At the same time, James stepped forward and offered his hand to Prince William, who instead pulled the boy into a gentle hug. The photographer, recognizing the significance of the moment, quietly captured the images. These wouldn't be formal royal portraits. They would be pictures of pure human connection between two caring adults and two remarkable children. "Thank you for making me feel like a real princess," Emma whispered into Catherine's ear during their embrace. "Thank you for teaching me what being a real princess truly means," Catherine whispered back, her voice breaking slightly. When they finally separated, both Emma and Catherine had tears in their eyes. William and James were still talking quietly, the prince giving the boy some final words of encouragement about his future in medicine. As the royal couple walked toward the exit, followed by their security detail and hospital administrators, every child and family member they had met lined the hallway. It was completely unplanned, but somehow everyone had gathered to see them off. The children waved from wheelchairs and doorways, many of them holding gifts they had quickly made or personal items they wanted to share. Catherine and William stopped repeatedly to accept these offerings. A hand-drawn picture, a friendship bracelet, a get-well card that a child had made for another patient. "This has been one of the most meaningful days of our lives," Catherine told Dr. Thompson as they reached the hospital's main entrance. "These children have taught us more about courage and kindness than any lesson we've ever learned." William nodded in agreement. "We came here thinking we were bringing something to these families, but we're leaving with far more than we gave. These children are truly remarkable." Dr. Thompson felt proud beyond words. They really are. Emma and James, in particular, have been extraordinary examples of how grace and kindness can flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. "We'd like to stay in touch with their progress, if that's appropriate," Catherine said. "Not for publicity, but because we genuinely care about how their stories unfold." After the royal couple departed, the hospital buzzed with excitement and emotion. Children who had been quiet and withdrawn were suddenly animated, talking excitedly about their conversations. With the Prince and Princess of Wales, Emma couldn't stop looking at her bracelet and repeating the stories Catherine had told her about kindness and princess hearts. "Mummy," she said to Sarah, "I feel different now. I feel like I can be brave for other people, not just for myself." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly. "You've always been brave for other people, sweetheart. Now you just know that others can see it too." James was equally transformed by the experience. He spent the rest of the day writing in his new notebook, carefully recording not just medical facts he had learned, but also thoughts about kindness, leadership, and what it meant to care for people. "Dad," he said to David that evening, "Prince William told me that caring about people is the most important part of being helpful. I want to remember that forever." The story of the visit remained private for several days, as the hospital honored the royal couple's request for discretion. But eventually, with permission from all the families involved, Dr. Thompson shared some details with the hospital's communications team. When the story was finally made public, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The photographs of Catherine embracing Emma and William hugging James touched hearts across the nation and around the world. News outlets struggled to capture the essence of what had happened. This wasn't a typical royal engagement with scheduled photo opportunities and prepared remarks. This was a genuine display of compassion that had occurred naturally between caring adults and inspiring children. Social media exploded with comments from people who were moved to tears by the images and the story behind them. But more importantly, the story sparked conversations about childhood illness, the importance of supporting families in medical crises, and the power of small acts of kindness to create profound change. Emma's story, in particular, resonated with people everywhere. Here was a little girl facing a serious illness who had learned to find strength through helping others. Her conversation with Catherine about having a princess heart became a symbol of how true nobility comes from character, not title. James's determination to become a doctor despite his own medical challenges inspired countless young people to consider careers in healthcare. His notebook, gifted by Prince William, became a symbol of believing in children's dreams and potential even during their most difficult moments. The families found themselves at the center of a media storm, but it was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of invasive questions about their children's illnesses, reporters wanted to hear about kindness, hope, and resilience. "What people don't understand," Sarah told one journalist, "is that Emma has always been this way. The Princess of Wales didn't make her kind. She recognized the kindness that was already there and celebrated it." Linda Parker expressed similar sentiments about James. "Prince William didn't plant the dream of becoming a doctor in my son's mind. He saw that dream and told James it was worth pursuing. Sometimes that's all children need, someone to believe in them." The hospital received thousands of letters and donations from people who had been touched by the story. Children from schools across the country sent handmade cards to Emma, James, and other patients in the ward. One letter particularly moved the hospital staff. It came from a group of children at a primary school in Scotland who had organized a fundraiser after hearing about Emma and James's story. "Dear Emma and James," the letter read, "we heard about how you help other children feel better when they're scared. We want to help too. We had a bake sale and raised money for your hospital so other children can get better like you. You taught us that being kind is the most important superpower anyone can have." Dr. Thompson shared this letter with both families, and it became clear that Emma and James's influence was spreading far beyond the hospital walls. Their examples of maintaining kindness and hope during difficult times were inspiring other children to look for ways to help and care for others. The royal couple, meanwhile, continued to follow the children's progress privately. Through Dr. Thompson, they received regular updates on both Emma and James's treatments and recovery. When Emma's latest scans showed significant improvement and her treatment was scaled back, Catherine sent a private note congratulating her on her progress and reminding her to keep her princess heart strong. When James successfully completed a major milestone in his recovery, William sent an encouraging message about how proud he was of the boy's determination and strength. These private gestures, never publicized or announced, meant the world to both families. They showed that the visit hadn't been just a duty or obligation for the royal couple, but the beginning of genuine care and concern for these remarkable children. The visit had created ripple effects that continued to spread throughout the hospital and beyond. Other families dealing with childhood illness found hope and inspiration in Emma and James's stories. Healthcare workers felt renewed purpose in their daily work, reminded of the profound impact they could have through simple acts of kindness and genuine care. Most importantly, the story had reminded an entire nation that extraordinary character often emerges from ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Emma and James hadn't set out to inspire others. They had simply chosen to respond to their difficulties with grace, kindness, and hope. Their example, recognized and celebrated by the Prince and Princess of Wales, had become a beacon of light for anyone struggling with adversity, showing that even in the darkest moments, the choice to remain kind and caring could illuminate the world around them. 3 months after the royal visit, Emma was finally well enough to go home. Her latest scan showed that the treatment had been successful, and while she would need regular checkups, she was officially in remission. The day of her discharge was bittersweet. She was overjoyed to be going home, but sad to leave the friends and caregivers who had become like family. As Sarah packed Emma's belongings, she noticed how carefully her daughter handled the silver bracelet Catherine had given her. Emma had worn it every single day since the visit, and it had become her most precious possession. "Are you ready to go home, Princess?" Sarah asked, using the nickname that had taken on new meaning since their royal encounter. Emma nodded, but then looked thoughtful. "Mummy, what about the other children? Who's going to help them feel welcome when they're scared?" This question revealed something beautiful about Emma's character. Even on the day of her own liberation from the hospital, she was thinking about others who would continue to face the challenges she was leaving behind. Dr. Thompson, who had come to say goodbye, overheard Emma's concern. "You know what, Emma? Your kindness has already made a lasting difference here. The nurses tell me that new patients often ask about the girl with the princess heart, who helped other children feel brave." Emma's eyes brightened. "Really? Really? And we've started something new called the Princess Heart Program, where children who are feeling better help welcome new patients, just like you did. You inspired that." Meanwhile, James was making remarkable progress in his own recovery. His latest surgery had been completely successful, and his doctors were amazed by his positive attitude and determination throughout his treatment. He had filled nearly half of his notebook with observations about medical procedures, kind acts he had witnessed, and plans for his future career. "I want to work at this hospital someday," James told his parents one afternoon. "I want to be the doctor who explains things to kids so they won't be scared, just like Dr. Thompson did for me." David and Linda Parker exchanged proud looks. Their son's experience, while difficult, had crystallized his sense of purpose in ways they never could have imagined. The royal couple's interest in both children hadn't waned. Through private channels, they continued to receive updates on Emma and James's progress. When they learned about Emma's successful treatment and James's remarkable recovery, they made another decision that would surprise everyone involved. Dr. Thompson received another unexpected phone call, this one even more surprising than the first. "Dr. Thompson," the voice said, "Their Royal Highnesses would like to invite Emma and James along with their families to a private tea at Kensington Palace. They'd like to celebrate the children's recovery and continue their friendship." Dr. Thompson nearly dropped the phone. A private invitation to the palace was unprecedented, but she realized this was simply the natural continuation of the genuine relationship that had begun in the hospital. When the families received the invitation, their reactions were mixed with disbelief and joy. Emma immediately asked if she could wear her bracelet to meet Catherine again, while James wondered if he could bring his notebook to show Prince William what he had written. The day of the palace visit arrived with bright spring sunshine. Emma wore a new dress her mother had bought specially for the occasion, and her hair had begun to grow back in soft curls. James wore his best outfit and carried his notebook carefully in a small bag. As their car approached Kensington Palace, both families felt overwhelmed by the grandeur of the setting, but their nervousness melted away when Catherine and William met them personally at the entrance, just as warm and welcoming as they had been at the hospital. "Emma." "James?" Catherine exclaimed, immediately kneeling down to hug Emma and admire how healthy she looked. "You both look wonderful." William shook hands with James, now standing tall and confident. "I've been wondering what you've been writing in that notebook," he said with genuine curiosity. The tea was held in a private sitting room overlooking the palace gardens. But instead of formal palace protocol, it felt like a gathering of friends who were catching up after time apart. Catherine and William asked detailed questions about the children's recoveries, their plans for returning to school, and their future dreams. Emma told Catherine about the Princess Heart program that had been started at the hospital. "They named it after what you taught me," she said proudly. "Other children are learning about having princess hearts too." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "That's the most beautiful tribute I could ever imagine," she said softly. You've turned your own experience into a gift for others. James eagerly showed Prince William his notebook, which was now filled with drawings, medical terms, observations about different treatments, and most importantly, stories about the kindness he had witnessed from doctors and nurses. "This is incredible, James," William said, carefully reading through the pages. "You've essentially written a guide for how to care for children in hospitals. This could actually help train doctors and nurses." James's eyes widened. "Really? Could it really help other people?" "Absolutely. You've documented not just the medical side, but the human side of healing. That's exactly what healthcare professionals need to understand." During their visit, the children met other members of the palace staff, including the chef who prepared special treats for them, and the gardener who showed them around the beautiful grounds. Everyone they encountered treated them not as visitors, but as honored guests. At one point, Catherine took Emma on a private tour of some of the palace rooms, showing her portraits of historical queens and princesses. "These women all had different challenges," Catherine explained. "But the ones who are remembered most fondly are those who used their positions to help others, just like you do." Emma studied each portrait carefully. "Did they all have princess hearts?" she asked. "I think the best ones did," Catherine replied, "and I think they would be very proud to know that their legacy lives on in young people like you." Meanwhile, William and James had a conversation about leadership and service. "Being in a position to help others is both a privilege and a responsibility," William explained. "Whether you're a prince or a doctor, the most important thing is to use whatever abilities you have to make life better for other people." As the afternoon wound down, Catherine and William had one final surprise for their young friends. They presented both children with official photographs from their hospital visit, personally inscribed with messages of encouragement and signed by both royal family members. But more meaningful than the formal gifts were the promises they made to stay in touch. "We want to hear about your first day back at school," Catherine told Emma. "And your progress in your medical studies," William added to James. The families left the palace feeling transformed once again. The visit had reinforced that the royal couple's interest in their children was genuine and lasting. Not just a single moment of publicity. News of the palace visit, when it was eventually shared with the public, created another wave of positive response. People were moved by the continued relationship between the royal couple and the children, seeing it as an example of authentic compassion that extended beyond formal duties. Emma returned to her school in Yorkshire as something of a local celebrity, but she handled the attention with the same grace she had shown throughout her illness. Her teachers were amazed by her maturity and her immediate desire to help other students who were struggling with various challenges. Emma seems to have developed an unusual ability to notice when other children are having difficulties, her teacher reported to Sarah. She approaches them with such natural kindness and seems to know exactly what to say to make them feel better. James also returned to school with renewed confidence and purpose. His experience had made him more focused on his studies, particularly in science and mathematics, as he prepared for his future medical career. His teachers noticed that he had developed exceptional empathy for classmates who were dealing with any kind of adversity. Both children had been transformed by their experiences, not just the illness and recovery, but by the recognition and encouragement they had received from two of the most prominent people in their country. They had learned that their kindness mattered, that their dreams were valid, and that even in difficult circumstances, they could make a positive difference in the world around them. The ripple effects of their stories continued to spread. Schools across the country began implementing their own versions of the Princess Heart program, teaching children about the importance of kindness and empathy. Medical schools started incorporating James's notebook observations into their training programs, recognizing the value of understanding healthcare from a patient's perspective. Most importantly, Emma and James had become living examples of how extraordinary character can emerge from ordinary circumstances, and how the recognition and encouragement of that character can inspire countless others to strive for the same level of kindness and grace. 5 years after their first meeting at Great Ormond Street Hospital, Emma and James had grown into remarkable young teenagers whose lives continued to intersect in unexpected ways. Emma, now 13, had not only maintained her health, but had become a youth ambassador for the hospital, returning regularly to visit new patients and their families. James, at 15, was excelling in his studies and had already begun volunteering at local medical clinics during school holidays. The friendship between the two families had deepened over the years, strengthened by their shared experience and the continued interest of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Catherine and William had kept their promise to stay connected, sending personal notes on birthdays, celebrating academic achievements, and maintaining a genuine friendship that had grown far beyond their original meeting. Emma had grown into a confident young woman whose passion for helping others had expanded beyond the hospital walls. She had started a charity initiative at her secondary school called Princess Hearts in Action, which organized students to visit elderly care homes, help with community gardens, and support younger students who were struggling academically or socially. The bracelet Princess Catherine gave me reminds me every day that kindness is a choice. Emma explained to a journalist who was writing a follow-up story about the children's progress. It's not always easy to be kind, especially when you're having a difficult day yourself, but it's always possible. Emma's mother, Sarah, watched her daughter with amazement and pride. Sometimes I look at her and wonder where this wisdom comes from, she confided to Linda Parker during one of their regular coffee meetings. It's as if that experience with the royal family unlocked something in her that was always there but needed recognition to flourish. James had developed into a serious young scholar with an unwavering focus on his goal of becoming a pediatric oncologist. His notebook, once a simple gift from Prince William, had evolved into multiple volumes documenting not just his medical knowledge, but his philosophy of patient care and his observations about the healing power of compassion. "I want to be the kind of doctor who remembers what it feels like to be the patient," James often said. His teachers at school were impressed by his maturity and his ability to connect complex scientific concepts with human emotions and experiences. The annual charity gala at Great Ormond Street Hospital had become a significant event, and this year, Dr. Thompson had a special surprise planned. She had secretly arranged for Emma and James to be the keynote speakers, sharing their stories and the lessons they had learned about resilience, kindness, and hope. But the bigger surprise came when Catherine and William agreed to attend the gala as guests of honor, specifically to support Emma and James's presentations. The royal couple had watched from a distance as both children had grown and thrived, and they wanted to publicly celebrate the young people they had come to genuinely care about. The night of the gala, Emma stood at the podium wearing her silver bracelet, now accompanied by several other pieces of jewelry that represented milestones in her journey. She looked out at an audience of medical professionals, donors, families, and dignitaries, including the Prince and Princess of Wales sitting in the front row. 5 years ago, I was a scared 8-year-old girl who thought being sick meant I couldn't help anyone, Emma began, her voice clear and confident. Then I met a real princess who taught me that having a princess heart means finding ways to care for others, no matter what challenges you're facing yourself. She spoke about her experience in the hospital, the lessons she had learned about kindness and courage, and how those lessons had shaped her teenage years. I learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you choose to help others even when you are scared. Emma concluded her speech by announcing a new initiative she had been working on secretly for months. Tonight, I'm launching the Princess Heart Foundation, which will provide support and encouragement to young people facing serious illnesses. But more than that, it will train them to become advocates and helpers for other children in similar situations. The audience erupted in applause, but Emma could see that Catherine had tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Emma realized that she had not only lived up to the potential the princess had seen in her, but had exceeded it. James followed Emma's presentation with his own remarkable speech. Now tall and confident, he spoke about his journey from patient to advocate to future physician. Prince William once told me that caring about people is the most important part of helping them, James said, looking directly at William as he spoke. I've learned that medicine is not just about fixing what's broken in someone's body. It's about understanding what's broken in their spirit and helping to heal that too. Every interaction with a patient is an opportunity to practice the kind of compassion that Prince William and Princess Catherine showed me when I needed it most. James announced his own surprise. He had been accepted into an early admission program at one of the country's top medical schools, with a full scholarship funded by donations from people who had been inspired by his story over the years. After the speeches, Catherine and William joined Emma and James on stage for what was planned to be a brief photo opportunity. But instead, it turned into an impromptu conversation that captivated the entire audience. Emma, James, Catherine said, addressing them as she would old friends. Watching you both grow into the remarkable young people you've become has been one of the greatest privileges of our lives. You've taught us as much as we've hopefully taught you. William nodded in agreement. When we met you 5 years ago, we saw potential. Tonight, we see that potential fulfilled and exceeded. You've both become exactly the kind of leaders our world needs. Emma, now confident enough to speak naturally with the royal couple in front of hundreds of people, responded with characteristic grace. You didn't just visit us in the hospital that day. You saw us, really saw us, as people who mattered. That changed everything for us. James added, you believed in our dreams when they seemed impossible. Now those dreams are becoming reality, and we want to use our futures to help other children believe in their dreams too. The exchange was spontaneous and genuine, showing the world that the relationship between these 4 people had grown into something far more meaningful than a charitable royal visit. It had become a lasting friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. After the gala, the families gathered privately with Catherine and William for a quiet dinner. The conversation flowed easily, covering Emma's plans for university, James's medical school preparations, and the ongoing development of both their charitable initiatives. I have something to tell you both, Catherine said as the evening wound down. Next year, I'm establishing the Princess Heart Award as part of our Royal Foundation. It will recognize young people who demonstrate exceptional kindness and resilience in the face of adversity. Emma and James, you'll be our first recipients, but more importantly, you'll help select future winners. Both teenagers were stunned. To be included in an official Royal Foundation initiative was beyond anything they had imagined. William added, we want your voices to be part of how we identify and support other young people who have the same remarkable character you've both shown. Your experiences give you insights that we could never have. As the families prepared to leave that evening, Emma and James exchanged a look that acknowledged how far they had traveled from those frightened children in the hospital ward. They had not only survived their medical challenges, they had transformed those challenges into purpose and meaning. Emma's Princess Heart Foundation and James's future medical career represented the fruition of dreams that had been nurtured by royal recognition but sustained by their own determination and character. Their story had become an inspiration to thousands of other young people facing various challenges, showing that extraordinary circumstances could produce extraordinary character. The circle was now complete, but it was also beginning anew. Emma and James, who had once been recipients of kindness and encouragement, had become the givers of kindness and encouragement to others. The gentle gesture that had begun with a royal visit to comfort 2 sick children had grown into a movement of compassion that would touch countless lives for generations to come. Years later, when people spoke of William and Catherine's legacy of charitable work, the story of Emma and James was always central to the discussion. It represented everything that royal service could be at its best: genuine human connection, long-term commitment, and the wisdom to recognize and nurture the best in ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. The silver bracelet Emma still wore and the leather notebook James still carried had become symbols of how simple acts of recognition and kindness could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. Their story proved that the most powerful form of leadership is often the quiet recognition of potential in others and the patient nurturing of that potential until it can flourish and spread to benefit the wider world.